So Module 4, here in this module, we're dealing with cash flow analysis. So at the end of this module, you should be able to discuss the importance of analyzing the cash flow of your cooperative, should be able to explain what a statement of cash flows is, identify the sources and uses of cash, understand from the textbook direct and indirect method of cash flow, and identify any limitations you see with the current approach to reporting cash flows. So you'll often hear the comment in the business world, cash is king. And this is really important. You cannot overemphasize the importance of cash flow. So when we say cash is king, what we mean here is that you have to know the sources and timing of your cash inflows and outflows. So sometimes you see a business coming up with their projections for their revenues and their expenses, and it might show, yep, they're making, they're predicting on making lots of money, but the problem is sometimes they forget about the cash. So if you are going to be going into a new area of business, you're probably going to have an infusion of cash upfront to buy equipment, or if it's a service, to do a lot of upfront marketing and things of that nature. There's always a cost to getting your product or service to market. You have to keep track of the cash. How much cash is it going to require to get going on your endeavor, whatever that happens to be? Then you've got to look at your credit side of things. You buy goods and services on account. Typically, you don't pay cash. You might have payment arrangements with suppliers to pay in 30, 60, or 90 days. By the same token, oftentimes when you're selling a good or service, you may also offer payment arrangements. So you have to make sure these two line up. You have to have enough cash coming in to cover your cash outflow. So it's important to understand, while you may do these wonderful projections of how much revenue you can earn and what it's going to cost you in terms of investments to earn that, you can't forget the concept that cash is absolutely necessary in order for your business to keep functioning. So because of that, it's important to understand the purpose of the statement of cash flows. So the statement of cash flows provides information about cash receipts, cash disbursements, how to predict the amount and timing of cash flows. It evaluates management decisions by reporting how cash was obtained and how it was used by the entity, and the ability to generate cash necessary to pay your patronage dividends, to pay your interest on any debt instruments, and to make principal repayments on any debt that you may have incurred. Also, from a cash point of view, it's important to understand the difference between net profit and net loss, which is basically accrual-based, and the cash flow generated from that revenue and the cash flow needed to support the expenses. So in addition to your traditional cash flow statements on your financial statements, there's also another way to do this, and it's called OCFADE, Operating Cash Flow After Interest and Distribution. So this was developed by my predecessor, who was an instructor for this course, Professor Alan Robb, who is a cooperative forensic accountant, and he's based in New Zealand. And he's, as I mentioned, retired from teaching in this program. But he developed this as a non-technical way to look at cash flows, and it's really helpful for users in cooperatives who are not that financially sophisticated to really understand these cash flow statements. So it's a non-technical way to look at it. And this model was actually used by Wendy Holmes, who is a graduate of our MMCCU program, and she actually published a case study on applying OCFADE and to the dairy sector, and I have a video of my discussion with her on that. So she explains in the video how this particular framework, OCFADE, would have benefited the dairy co-op that she's talking about in her paper. So have a listen to what Wendy has to say, and I think you'll find it interesting. So this is not intended to replace your traditional cash flow statement in your financial statements. What it is an additional tool, particularly for small to medium-sized co-ops who may not have a lot of financial depth on their board of directors, so you can easily explain the cash to them. So in terms of your living lab for Module 4, what I want you to do is basically apply this OCFADE concept to your cooperative or another cooperative of your choosing, and you're given several instructions here what you need to do. Prepare a graph of your co-op's financial position, interpret your findings, and then classify your co-op according to the categories that are included in OCFADE. And then compare this model, OCFADE, to your traditional cash flow statement and discuss any advantages and disadvantages of using it. So that concludes Module 4.